You're listening to the Mind Over Finger podcast, episode number 25.
Welcome to the Mind Over Finger podcast, discussions on mindful music making, efficient practice, and building a purposeful career. And now, your host, Dr. Renee Paul Gauthier.
Hi, everyone. I hope you're doing great. Last week, I spoke with percussionist Cameron Leach. We discussed his approach to practicing and his philosophy about communicating with the audience during a performance and the ways he tries to establish a real rapport with his listeners, starting in the practice room and following through on stage. Now, I'm really excited about today's episode, and I think it's a particularly inspiring one. So as you listen, grab and share a screenshot to let me know you're listening and spread the word. As I said last week, this is the first of a series of 3 very special episodes. As a performer and a teacher, I constantly feel the presence and the influence of the musicians that have helped shape me as an artist with their knowledge, wisdom, skills, and with their examples. And there are too many to interview them all, but there are 3 that I consider as the main pedagogical influences in my life, and you will get to meet them in the coming weeks. I begin today with Canadian violinist, teacher, and conductor Jean-François Rivest, who was my teacher from the age of 9 when I began Conservatory, all the way to the age of 20 when I graduated from the University of Montreal. Jean-François is a very active conductor in the province of Quebec, and he's renowned for his energy, his precise technique, and his style, which is described as passionate, moving, and deeply involved. He served as music director for several ensembles and orchestras in Canada, and his discography includes a large variety of musical genres ranging from the Baroque era up to today. Jean-François is also an esteemed pedagogue, and he's been teaching both violin and conducting at the University of Montreal since 1993. He was trained at the Montreal Conservatory and the Juilliard School, and before starting his teaching and conducting career, he quickly established himself as one of the foremost Quebec violinists. As you'll see in our conversation, Jean-François believes that the many facets of nature and all aspects of life are a vital source of artistic inspiration, and that's something that hugely impacted me as a child and a young musician. As a student of Ivan Galamian and Dorothy DeLay, and being a fantastic violinist himself, he gave me excellent instruction in violin playing and music making with an incredible dedication and without counting the hours. But he gave me way more than that. He was and still is a wise mentor and a father figure. And he taught me to be aware of everything around me, to go deeper, and to see life as a great gift and a wonderful adventure. Jean-François and I have an amazing conversation about learning to listen to ourselves, paying attention, nurturing our imagination, live passionately, and broadening our horizons as humans and musicians. I'm failing at expressing how very special this episode is to me, but I know that you will find it extremely inspiring. And as for my previous French-speaking guests, there is a little bonus for my French-speaking listeners at the end. Alors si votre langage est le français, restez des nôtres. Let's go to the show. Jean-François Rivest, I'm so incredibly happy to have you on the show today.
Well, same here. I'm very happy to be here.
Jean-François, you are, without a doubt, the most influential musical presence in my life. As I said in the intro, I started studying with you at the age of 9 years old, and I continued to study with you until I graduated from my undergrad. And I can say that it's with you that the foundations of everything I am as a musician and teacher and artist was established. So it's really wonderful to have you here today. And Jean-François, before we talk, about music and music making, I really want my listeners to get to know you a little bit because you have such a remarkable journey. I had a great conversation with violinist Tessa Lark a few weeks ago, and she said something that really made me think of you. She was quoting a teacher of hers who gave her the advice to be interested, not interesting. And I think that it encapsulates well one of the many reasons why you are one of the most interesting people in my life. And I think that you are truly interested in everything. And I was, and I still am, amazed at how passionate you are about learning everything you can about everything, whether it's music or food or history, art, literature, or a hobby of any kind. When you become interested in something, you dig deeper than anyone I know. And I don't even know when you find the time to sleep. But, it's like you live 5 lives while the rest of us are trying to make the best out of one. But you've done so many amazing things, and I think we can all learn and be inspired by your life. So, can you please tell us about you and your musical journey and how you got to where you are and how this incredible artistic path of yours has unfolded?
Well, after such an introduction, so almost hard to say anything. Thank you, Renipot. Um, well, I think that we are all what and who we are. So, in a way, we don't look at or see ourselves from inside the way you just described. We just try to do the best we can. But I think that the key is for sure open-mindedness and curiosity. That's for sure. And maybe we can talk about that later because it's really very, very important in the whole topic of your podcast, which is fabulous, by the way. Congrats for the great show you're doing. Um, uh, just a brief, if you want me to say so, brief history of what I've done. I've started out like a normal, gifted young violinist, and I studied piano also as well for a few years until at age 11. My father said, decide one instrument, please. So I concentrated on the violin. Well, I had some forgotten years, adolescent years, where I played the electric guitar in some groups, and I composed some progressive rock and all sorts of other things. But I think I kept practicing. I don't remember, but I think I did keep practicing and having my normal violinist life. And then perhaps age 15, I really concentrated. And so I finished. The only thing that's perhaps not standard is that at the end of that period, let's say age 16, 17, I was very interested by composition, fugue, counterpoint, harmony, and all that. So I did study more than the average violinist. All those things that make one musician's mind a bit more, let's say, constructed, perhaps. And then I left to Juilliard and I did my bachelor's in 1 year and my master's in 1 year. So I stayed only 2 years in New York with Dorothée Delay. In the previous years, I went to Meadowmount, the violinist camp in northern New York State, and I studied with Mr. Galamian all these summers. I was there age 11, the first summer. Your podcast about practicing. Well, when you're age 11 and you have 9 weeks in a foreign language and you have to practice 5 friggin' hours, you don't know what to do. So that came later. But anyways, so after that, I came back from Juilliard, and I was fortunate to win the audition for the first violins in the Montreal Symphony. So at age 20, I was in the violinists of the first violins of the Montreal Symphony, while doing some solo and some chamber music, some ensembles, and I started teaching at McGill. And after 5 years of that, I took my retirement. age 25, and because I was certainly not made to be in the bottom of a violin section in an orchestra. I don't say that like if it's bad. I think everybody has his or her own aspirations. One of mine is most importantly to take the responsibility of the whole picture of the music. So that's why I decided to do something else. For a while, I went to a city that many of your listeners might not know of, which is about 300 miles north of Montreal in the real winter here in Chicoutimi. And that's where I met you because I had a great violin class there in the Conservatory with fantastic, gifted young pupils, among which you are certainly one of the best I ever had. And we had a great time together, and I had a great time in Chicoutimi. I met my wife. I stayed there for 7 years, and it was a great, great part of my life. And for the benefit of your listeners, why to do that? Because it's very rare that an artist goes to a smaller place, let's say, perhaps more in Europe, but here in America, you don't do that. But for me, I'm very attracted by nature and all its manifestations, including activities, outdoor activities. So I really, after all these years in big cities, including the Big Apple, I needed to get away from the cities. So that's why I accepted that post in the conservatory of this small town, Chicoutimi. And it's so beautiful. And the nature is so wonderful. And that will lead me later to answer other of your questions about the violin and practicing and all that. But I think that it's part of this. One has to grow and enrich parts of him or herself that are not specifically related to music sometimes to become a better musician. So let's say that was a big parenthesis in my professional life. And then I came back to Montreal as a teacher at the University of Montreal, and I started conducting. And since, let's say, almost 20 years now, I've been a conductor, and I almost quit. No, I did totally quit playing the violin, which is a pity, but one cannot do everything at once. So that's why now I am a conductor, and I'm in the middle of a production of Così fan tutte, and I've been conducting, for the last many years, actually. That's my main activity, and I teach conducting now as well.
That's an incredible journey.
Quite
And
varied, for sure.
yes. And, I'm really glad that you mentioned that you did this unusual move of leaving the big city and the big position to go back to maybe a more centered
Hmm.
way of living. Because what you said, and I think you used the words grow and enrich part of
Hmm.
ourselves, is something that we neglect so much. And it's so important in our development. So, thank you for mentioning all these
Hmm.
things, and I hope you write a book about your life at some point, because
Oh,
as you were going through your story, I had all of these anecdotes about all of the million other things that you do outside of the small skeleton you just gave us, and it's really incredible. So
well, thank you, René Paul. But it's everybody has a bunch of aspirations and dreams, and one has to live some of them. Well, of course, it's impossible to live them all, and I hope everybody has way too many. But we have to have a few that we do finally um, take the appropriate actions to live them. So, of course, to quit a job in the big symphony and a big university and just go for half the salary to a smaller town is a big move. It was the one I did. Some other people do some other moves, but one has to pursue at least some of their dreams, and that's. I think that's life is could be just the next day and the next job and the next day and the next job, and that's really not enriching very much. So
mm,
I think that's why this is important. The other thing that I want to mention is that everybody who is perhaps listening to this wants to be a better musician, but unfortunately, the only way to become a better musician is to become a better person and to live better things and to enrich ourselves with our own content, our own
mm,
life. And being a conductor, I kind of realized it even more than as a violinist. Because as a violinist, you still have that playground of the instrument. You can learn the instrument. But the instrument is like, if you learn how to use the shovel, but there's no snow, there's no point having a shovel. The instrument is a tool. what you have to say is the real thing, and what you have to
Mm.
say comes from who you are. And the dancer, the actor, and the conductor is the same. Have no instrument. I think the singer and the dancer are the one that are most exposed. That's why they're so emotional and sensitive and all that. But as a conductor, it's even worse. You don't make even a sound. So you let other people play, and you just guide them where the global idea that you're proposing, you propose the idea to the musicians. But I really think that growing as a musician is growing as a person. So
Mm.
therefore, you have to do things.
Jean-François, this is really great. And one of the biggest gifts you gave me as my teacher and guide and mentor is teaching me how to pay attention and listen. And that taught me so much. And you always encourage this in us, your students, to pay attention to our environment and observe the colors and the sounds and the beauty, and to develop curiosity and the true sense of wonder for everything that surrounds us. And in my case, I was really a child with a vivid imagination. And I
Mhm.
felt a real encouragement from you to explore this imagination and this creativity and see it as something that could really bring so much to my life. And it was the same for everything related to music. I mean, you are, as you mentioned, interested in all genres and all styles. And you always encourage me and all of your students to listen to everything and expand our musical horizons. And in the violin studio, you spent a lot of time guiding me in listening. And this was from the very beginning. You didn't wait until I was older or more mature. From the start, really listening to the sound I was producing and not stop at that and go deeper and listen
Mhm.
to the sound qualities, how it resonates, and the different colors, and pay attention to harmonic intonation, and listen how
Mhm.
that I remember this so vividly. Listen how a double stop rolls when it's really in tune. So I want to talk about this to you today because I see many students struggle and not really possess the skill to sensitively listen to themselves. And that really
Mhm.
slows down their progress. And I think that the ability to listen is the number one catalyst in the practice room, and knowing how to listen guides and can potentially change everything.
Yeah.
Like I just said, it's truly a gift that you gave me and all of your students, because it really opened my eyes to the importance of paying attention, listen, explore, and
Mhm.
continue to always learn and grow. And so I want us to talk about this today and how to develop an ability to listen better and nurture curiosity and sensitivity in both our practicing and performing.
Mhm.
So can you please unpack this for us a little bit?
Okay, sure, sure. It's a complex topic because, in a way, let's make it very clear that we could even end there. What we don't see, we don't see,
Hmm.
or what we don't know. So there's no way to see what you don't see if you don't use some appropriate glasses, tools, or whatever. So, in a way, I think that in order to listen, as you say, or hear better, or be more sensitive, well, that's a very dangerous topic. You cannot say to someone, be more sensitive. It's like saying to someone, love me, you can't do that. Um,
And that's the problem.
yeah, yeah. But by nature, people are sensitive. Sometimes it's hidden a bit deeper, but human people are sensitive. Actually, usually much more than they look like. But the problem is not the sensitivity. The problem is how to tune the radars,
Mm.
where to look with your sensitivity. I will use an analogy. One could walk in the forest and see nothing, and if you go with someone who really knows the birds and the plants and show you, look, that's edible, and look at this flower, it does this, and be careful, this mushroom is toxic, and all that. Then the next day you go back to the same forest and you don't look at it the same way because you know some of its inhabitants. Well, I think it's the same thing in the music. Music can come into one of your ear and get out the other way, through your head without you noticing much. And if you open your eyes, I mean your musical eyes, to how the music is made, constructed, of what elements it's made of, and all its different components, then you start looking at it with more details. You start having a more detailed perception. Then you can start using your sensitivity. So, in a way, to develop one's sensitivity means to develop one deep understanding of music. That's why I believe that all aspiring young talented musicians should really undergo a very high level training of, well, what you call in the States ear training, which is wrong. It's not the ear is just a shovel, again, it's the tool. It's the inner ear training. And, well, allow me a parenthesis here. I will say something that I really believe that some people find a bit shocking, but I think that music is not the art of sounds. I think music starts within one's inner musical imagination and is directed towards your listener's inner musical imagination. Then you need a transporter in between, and that's it, physical waves of sound that go from one instrument to the ears of the other listener. But fundamentally, it's just too bad that, no, it's not too bad. It's nice, but it's a tool. We need this. The music that we make with our instrument is a tool to convey, to transport that imagination into the other person's imagination. And in a way, we as interpreter are kind of a pipe, or a kind of a passeur. We put the imagination of the composer on our shoulders. We try to imagine what he wants. In a way, normal people in the hall cannot read the music and hear it in their heads like we do, because we train for that. It's a big training. So if we don't play the music, well, people won't hear it. So we have to play it. So we use our own imagination to understand what the composer's imagination was trying to do. We rebuild it our own way so that has a color, which is our interpretation. And then we play it for the people who hear it, and it goes again back into the realm of imagination in their own heads, their own soul, perhaps, whatever. And in a way, music is from one imagination to another one. So that's if one understands that, perhaps one will less try to practice and to play music like if it's an aesthetic or physical or plastic thing, but it's much more a spiritual and psychological message. It's an imaginary message. So to go back to your initial question, in order to develop that sensitivity, one has to develop one's imagination. That's period. That's the most important thing. You, as a child, you said it rightly. You were a child with a fantastic imagination, and you were very gifted, very young, so that helps. But that imagination is something that some people have more readily. Fortunately, that can be developed. The talent itself, the talent for hearing, it can be tuned, but it cannot be. I mean, it cannot come from nothing. That's for sure. A lot of people have more talent than they think, but um, if you're not a sensitive person, you will not become a more sensitive person years later. Yeah. So I think that one of the very important things is that children should be exposed to the beauty of art, music, literature, and whatever very early in their young age, and then it starts right away to make their sensitivity bloom and start to be in action. Let's say sensitivity is always there, but it has to start to work for them. So then, how to build that sense of imagination? I think that I go back to my example of walking in the forest. You need to have people who tell you where to look. So in that respect, in music, it's called studying harmony, studying counterpoint, studying history of music. No, not studying, really grasping it. So reading about Mozart's life is one thing, but really trying to be there and feel what he was feeling when he was writing, let's say, whatever is your favorite moment of Mozart's life, but trying to grasp the different moments of historical moments of composers' lives, or how the music is made, study of analysis, not analysis like a science to show that the pieces are made of so many parts. That's scientific analysis. Of course, we need to do that as well, but it's just a tool. But analysis that makes us really dig deep into the music so that we understand how it's really made so that we can ourselves recreate it as an interpreter. Because as a player and as an interpreter, our job is to recompose the music. We have to really understand it very well. Then I was saying harmony and counterpoint. I'm talking about really advanced, not that kind of, ear training with a bit of this and a bit of that, and after a couple of years you're through, and oof, I've done it. No, no, no. I mean a whole life of always doing more and more and more. So you can listen and really understand what you're listening, and seeing those different birds and plants that make this jungle that the music is, so you can really see what it is. Then your imagination can start to work for you when you see more through this big, incredibly complex cloud that a piece of music is, be it a Brahms sonata or a Mahler symphony. It's the problem are different, but they're the same in a way.
Mm. I don't even know where to start. There's so many incredible things in what you said. And I love what you said about how to tune the radar. And it's so true that we need a guide often to learn how to tune this radar. I love this analogy of walking through the forest and not seeing anything. It's
Hmm.
true. You can't see what you don't see. And
Yeah.
I think that's what you did with us as students, is that I would have never known what harmonic intonation was if you had not spent that time in the lesson to really make me explore and try things, and try this note with this note and move your finger just a little bit, and oh, do you hear how this resonates, how it rolls? And I think that with this came your incredible enthusiasm. It makes you feel as a student that you are really being led in on a wonderful secret. And I think it's
That's nice.
it's true. It's like,
I like.
but it's a great place to start, where I think for us to teacher to really take the time to show, we're so quick at wanting to show them techniques, but to really show them how to spend the time in listening and exploring, and look at the birds and look at the trees and
Yeah,
all the
yeah.
different leaves.
I have one thing though that is very important to say right now, because in our modern world of running around at light speed always, one of the real problem of musical learning and teaching is not enough time.
Mm,
If you remember well, of course you do, we did spend a number of hours that is way beyond the 1 hour per week that many lessons that people get.
yes.
You came to my house and we did some walks in the forest. We did some, and we did so many other things. I mean, my students, I used to take them for more than 1 hour a week, and it's the way I was brought by my own teacher. Also, several lessons a week sometimes. So in a way, the problem is that we do have to teach or learn that technique as well. It's totally irrelevant to try to be poetic and imaginative, and if we don't have the fingers to do it, we have to be able to do it with our playing what our imagination wants to do, and that means, unfortunately, really learning a good technique. So the time that's necessary is both the time to teach and learn a great technique, to teach and learn all the necessary etudes and repertoire and all that. And on top of that, having enough time to develop that imagination and that culture that I'm talking
Mm,
about. So some people might find it with there are various ways to do that. Some people might learn the technique from their instrumental teacher and get all those other musical dimensions from other mentors or I don't know, harmony teachers or composers or even some other musicians, fellow colleagues. Sometimes we learn more from doing a sonata with a friend pianist than having a lesson.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, we have to find a way to spend enough time to both learn a very solid technique and have enough time and mental space for imagination.
Mm. This is so great. And, I'm curious, in your case, I'm sure it's a mix of both, but do you think that this curiosity and this thirst for knowing more that you have, is it something that is mostly a personality trait, or is it something that was maybe ignited by someone else, maybe a teacher or a family?
Hmm. Okay, that's a big question because now we're going even backwards to the nature of each person. Of course, humanity as a whole and humans as beings are fundamentally curious. And I think that's one of the traits of human intelligence. And that's why we have started out from being molecules and we're now weighing weighing these molecules and exploring galaxies and writing cantatas. And we've evolved pretty far from where we started, although it's not finished and we have some problems. But as an individual, there is quite a big variation between each people, let's say, ability to be curious or perhaps mental space. Because one of the fundamental aspect of, let's say, human trait that one needs is to be calm enough or to be confident enough in life to have space to be curious, to have space to be amazed by beautiful things and all that. And unfortunately, some people are so stressed out by life that they don't have enough mental room or emotional space. That's probably the most important one. A place where you can just be in a sensitive state to learn things, to admire things, to imagine things, as we said before. But that requires that you're kind of confident. And that comes from own personalities and from upbringings and surroundings and, of course, family situations and all that. But let's say that the situation is the best possible and the kids are happy and doing what they like which is not always the case even for a very gifted person. I think that I think our school system is really not adapted to everybody. I'm talking about general school, not musical, but normal, primary and elementary and high school. It's really difficult for a lot of kids to go through that and feel that they're happy with the way they're learning, because it's made for a certain, very straight kind of type of one way of learning. We're really far backwards, I think, in our system of education. But anyways, that means that some kids don't have that room for time. But to go back to your question, if we do have enough room and enough time, well, that's where we can be really curious and develop. So it can be something that is very different from one person to another. Yes, and people can be curious, but might not have the drive to pursue their curiosity further because I don't know because I would not say because why, because so many reasons, but it's different from one person to another. Perhaps, just to finish, perhaps, yes, the help of some guidance in the family or in the teaching surroundings can help somebody to center and feed one's creativity and curiosity. It can be the case that somebody is in a state that he or she doesn't have the ability or emotional space to pursue that curiosity, and a mentor, a parent, a brother, or a great friend, or a lover, whatever, could help trigger to be more curious or to go further and to pursue one's curiosity. Life is very complex sometimes.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. And you're someone who doesn't only dig deep in your musical endeavors, but in everything, your hobbies, your interests, and you hiked across the Baffin
Mm.
territories for a few months, and you're now a
Yep,
pilot, and you sailed boats for months, and you know everything about food and fractals, if that's a word in English, and
it is.
the Lord of the Ring, and like you said, you love nature, and like I said earlier, you are interested, and I think that being interested can really expand who we are as musicians and artists. And I don't know, the complexity of human beings, just the way you put it, is what makes the tapestry so much more interesting when it comes to making art.
Yeah, but let's say, okay, that being said, let's try to be a bit more practical because it's very nice, everything that I just said, fine, but it looks very big. And in a way, if one wants to start from somewhere, I think that every gesture counts.
Mm.
So if I say, for example, that what feeds our imagination is culture, let's start with that. And culture is knowing some of the history of mankind, is reading some literature, is some knowing more about our repertoire. I mean, general repertoire. Another one of only our instrument is knowing about the other forms of art and all that. Well, that means that every book that one reads is going to help to be a better musician one day. Every CD that one listens to, well, that shows my age, huh? CDs, it's an old thing. Um, but every piece of music, and I hope in concert is even better, because one of the really bad things about our kids now is that they don't go to concerts anymore. And the only reason we do music is to play concerts for other people. But, anyways, everything that one can do to be more cultured is good. It's all good. So one doesn't need to look at the entirety of literature and say, well, I need to read all Balzac, otherwise I haven't read anything. That's 40 volumes, or I have to know all Beethoven. Well, start with the first quartet and the first sonata and the first symphony, and then perhaps later you'll get more.
Hmm.
But one thing at a time, I think. But the goal is to have more culture, because that's the background that will help our imagination.
It's so true. And you know what you just said? I think it's a big thing. Every gesture counts, and that works in both this macro context that you just described. As it's true, every gesture shapes who we are. And if I take it, down to a more down to earth or a more micro perspective, it's the same in
Hmm.
music making. It's the same in violin playing, because one of the thing I talk about with students is sound. There's no such thing as performance or practice sound. You're just creating sound.
Hmm.
And with every bow stroke, you have the potential to make sure it's beautiful and you're building proper technique.
Hmm.
Or you can not pay any attention to it and, maybe create some bad habits. So I love that this concept can be taken in both
Hmm.
perspective.
There's no reason to play music or practice if we're not digging and enjoying and sensitive to every fraction of a second. Why playing if it's just for the action, mechanical action of playing? We know that a lot of people feel that they have to practice, so therefore some people even turn on the TV and just play scales. I mean, every fraction of a second of playing should be made with our whole heart, even in stupid scales.
Hmm.
It's not stupid, actually. And that's perhaps let's have a little discussion on that topic if you want. Because one of the things that I hope and I feel that I was trying to communicate and to share with my students, and you in particular, and is one thing that it took me many years to understand. That's what I got from Mr. Galamin and from Madame Yelinkova, my teacher in Montreal. It's the intense relationship between the need of the ear and the need of the technique.
Mm.
It's very easy to say like that. Let me give an example. We all know that in violin, the secret of the violin playing is bow distribution. And that means that when And why do we need to save the bow here or to move the bow there? What's the reason? It is always an inner musical reason. You have to save the bow because you have to have more space for tension after. You have to loosen your arm because the note is looser, because the music moves, because the sound wants to ring in another way. But that relationship between the actual muscle memory of save the bow and move the bow. And I say it because I really think that those two words are the most important words of the violin playing. And if you remember our first lessons in my kitchen when you were 9 years old on the Acolyte concerto, it starts with that. The first note is save the bow and then move.
Yes.
Well, this is the most important is the relationship between all these bow playing technical aspects and how we hear what we want to hear. So I believe that practicing is an action of trying to make our muscles and our instrument do what our inner ear is trying to show us or what we hear in our heads. So again, I go back to that. If we don't hear well in our head, we will not be able to play it well.
Yes.
So even the young musician has to do a lot of solfège and musical dictation and harmony in order to be able to hear so well in one's ear that his or her muscles will try to do it on the violin or whatever instrument.
Yeah.
I would like to share a very special, how can I say, I did really something very special once that I want to share with your listeners. Being a conductor means that you don't play anymore and you listen in your head all the time. That's the only activity that you do as a conductor is 98% of the time is alone in your studio in front of your score, trying to listen and listen so hard in your head that when you get to that 2% of the time of conductor in front of the actual orchestra, because it's 2 or 3 rehearsals, we know that. So it goes very fast. You have such an image, mental image in your head that in a way your body communicates it some way or another, and people somewhere or another have no choice to follow you in that direction. Well, I used to do a lot of hiking, a lot of hiking. When I say a lot, it means all the way to the North Pole. And when I did that hiking, I used to walk by myself a lot. And to help walk sometimes, I don't know, 30, 35 miles in a day with a backpack, I used to use a way to help myself on my walking, which was to sing myself in my head some mantras. Like, the good old Om that we all know. And I used to like to hear, like if it was a Buddhist monk's chorus in my head that was singing those mantras. And, the repetitiveness of it helped me walk for miles and miles and miles. Okay, fine. Then I started to be much more busy as a quite new conductor, and it was my first time conducting all Brahms symphonies and all Schumann symphonies and name it. A lot of learning and a lot. I mean, I had played all these, but it's not the same thing to take charge of everything. So I studied a lot. I listened a lot in my head. For a few years, I didn't do much hiking because I was too busy. Then one day, my old hiking friend Patrick said, "Hey, let's go to the Adirondacks to do one big mountain." Okay, fine. We go back in winter and we do a big hike. And after several years, let's say 3 or 4, of not doing any and doing a lot of conducting, I went to that hiking and just as a habit, I started singing in my head my good old Buddhist monk choir mantras again. And then I almost fell on my butt because I was hearing a different chorus in my head with much, much more detailed harmonic interaction, like if there were a whole spectrum of resonance and colors and like resonances and harmonic rainbow of colors that I was not aware of before. Now you hear me well. The only difference was in my head a few years ago and in my head that second time it was purely my imagination had grown and I didn't know. I just saw it as a surprise, and that taught me a lot because it taught me that if one works on how one listens in one's head, then you can enhance one's inner ear without even noticing it. I didn't know that I was hearing better in my head. And I had a good ear before, and I trained a lot, but that was even more. So that taught me that it was a big surprise, and it was a really good surprise that one can really go deeper how you hear the detail of this, yes, the sound, as you say. And if you can imagine the sound with such a vivid detail, then when you try to do it with your own bow, you're going to do it better for sure. So again, we go back to imagination. So what the first thing I said was to tune and to enhance the radars so we can hear better outside. But then I'm talking about the inner imagination of sound now. So those are two different dimensions.
Jean-François, this was so great. Thank you so much for sharing. I wish we could keep going for the rest of the day, and I can't wait for the next time we'll get to do this in person. Hope to
Yeah,
visit Quebec soon again. But time flies, so how about a round of rapid fire questions before we switch to French?
sure.
And I say rapid fire, but they're never really rapid. So, for the people who are dreaming of a career that resemble yours, it's fascinating because you've had so many careers, but just tell us a little bit about what your life looks like. Because I always love hearing about what your life looks like.
Oh, well, it's different from a chunk of couple of years to another chunk of couple of years. Now I am 60 years old, and I have been teaching at University of Montreal for 27 years now. So my life is very different
Mm,
than it was 20 years ago. I don't think that what my life is now is very important for the young people who are listening, if they are. But let's say that life is always a combination of things that we want to do, things that we can, things we cannot. So I think that I would say just pursue your dreams, go for what you want to do, and how can I say this? Live the present time. My life, which I'm very fortunate, I have a great life. Family is very important, and friendship, and faithful friends and students, which who might consider friends, of course. Now, this is very important. Life is first of all made of human beings, and that's the most
mm,
important thing. There's no point doing music if one is a secluded, solitary creature. Of course, some people can be, solitary geniuses, but that's an exception. But let's say, as a human being, we are solitary, solidary. Sorry, we're not solitary. I wanted to say the contrary. So we're social. We're a social creature. So we need to put a lot of time and energy in being a good person with our close family and friends. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that we need to, and I think that you're asking me, I spend a considerable amount of time doing things that I find good for health, mental health, such as, yes, cooking, or taking the time to appreciate the beauty of nature, or whatever inspires you. And you said the word hobby earlier in the podcast, and I don't really believe in hobbies. I believe in passions. So if
mm,
there's something that really impassion you, well, just pursue it. And of course, from outside, people will think it's a hobby. Let's have an example. You were asking me about my life. I like to do aviation. Yes, you said it. So it's something that's always been in my blood. It's in my family. I've had several simulators and all that, but it's fairly recent that I've really digged with my physical body into a real airplane and learned my private pilot license and everything. But I cannot call that a hobby.
mm,
It takes so much study. It's so dangerous. It's so critical at every second. It requires so much training. Security is so maxed. I cannot call that a hobby. Some people love cooking, traveling. It can be considered a hobby, but if you do it passionately, it becomes something that is so important for you. So I would say, to answer your question, my life resembles a life of everything that I do is passionate and fun. And that's why I think it's healthy, and it can be very different. It's different from one stage of life to another. And of course, one has to, go through some hassles also. I mean, it's not always easy. So that's why the compensation of the other passions that one can have help go through the difficulties, because there are some
Je
difficulties.
pense que c'est ma réponse préférée à cette question-là. Jean-François, is there a performance that has stayed with you throughout the years, and why?
Huh. Yeah, man, that's a hard one. With literally several thousand concerts, what would be one memorable? My God, there are so many. It depends memorable in which respect. Memorable for it's one of the best concerts I've ever heard. Well, there's a few. I don't know. First time I heard the Cleveland Orchestra in New York once, and it was with, I think it was Giulini was still alive, and it was amazing. You have concerts like this that you say, "Wow, I've never heard anything like this before." But once there was a concert where I was playing the Montreal Symphony. It was 20 years old, and Leontine Price came and sang with us. And she finished the her bunch of arias that was totally incredible with an encore, and she sang her famous "My Man's Gone Now," and it was so overpoweringly beautiful that I had to run out of stage after the performance, to run outside to just go and be by myself, to weep my whole body. It was really amazing. Sometimes you don't know why. Some people, they will sing or play. There's one note that will trigger a flow of emotion that's amazing. I think that's totally inexplicable, and that's the power of music.
Mm.
But I've had several experiences where you are in the middle of nowhere on tour, and then it's sometimes it's very funny. And one more I want to say. I was doing a tour with my pianist of Mozart sonatas on original instruments, because I recorded all the 16 sonatas on a label called Analecta, and it's out there on Naxos online. And we did a lot of touring before we recorded. I was playing on a Baroque violin 1680 Albanus with the classical bow, and my partner David Brightman was playing on a great fortepiano similar to the one in Mozart's room in Salzburg. So we went to a tour of Nova Scotia, Canada, and there was a remote location that we knew of that was going to be hard to get to, up in the mountains. And literally, we had to go up with it. We had the fortepiano in a little love truck, and we literally had to climb up a two, a two-tire track road up the mountain. And it started to be really, really foggy, and we went into the fog and continued and continued. And we finally found on the top of those mountains, totally in the mist, this little wooden church with no electricity, no running water, nothing, nobody. And it was really, really, really funny. We installed the piano, he tuned, and we started rehearsing. It sounded great, but we were a bit afraid of no light, But unfortunately, the concert was at the end of the afternoon, and there was enough light to play. And suddenly, half an hour before the concert, hundreds of people started to arrive with pickups from all over the country. It was totally surreal. And then the church was full. We played that concert. It was so humid, and without electricity, I could not use the hair blower to straighten up my hair on my bow, which was so mellow because of the humidity. But anyways, and then everybody left. And then we were totally alone again after the concert, in the middle of the mountains in the mist. It was really it's like if it had not happened, a dream.
This is a great adventure.
Yeah.
So, as you mentioned, you don't really play the violin anymore, on maybe for fun? still?
Yeah, yeah, I did once or twice. Not that much for fun. It was the funeral of my father-in-law, and I decided with my daughter Julie, who is a violinist. We played together for him and for my wife, who of course didn't play. But, I played once in the last 10 years, perhaps. No, I don't play. I don't have to. You know what? Playing is easy. It's not playing the problem. It's the very topic of your thing. It's the practicing the problem. You know, I don't have time to practice.
So, for those of us who are still playing, do you have a tool that you think is really important to use in the practice room?
Yeah, there's a couple I was thinking of. One of them is the big picture.
Mm.
So if one can see that, for example, in the Tchaikovsky first movement, there's some difficulties in the recap that are way more difficult than in the exposition, then one should plan the practicing in consequence, having a big picture of all the difficulties of a piece or a movement and going for the very, very organic kind of practicing where you address the difficulties by topic. Uh, you know, for example, if we have the same well, twice in the piece, well, you practice both in the same instance. And then if you have to practice, let's say, another, why not practicing both passages at the same time? So a good way to analyze all the difficulties, see the big picture, and make a plan of how to address all these difficulties by topic and not on a timeline that goes from the first note to the last note of the piece. That's one thing. The second one, I would say that it's the principle of the obstacle
Mm.
course. I'm talking about, let's say, well, you know, because we spoke about that earlier many years ago. But if you think of one difficulty, let's say one arpeggio that goes up to the top note, and of course everybody miss the top note always, and then you practice until you finally reach the top note once, and then you move on to something else. Of course, you practiced 10 times missing it, and you get it once, so you're going to be crappy next time for sure. Um, the obstacle course principle for me is that if you start running an obstacle course, the first few obstacles will be kind of okay and easy, but the more you run through the obstacle course, the more you're going to be breathless, and the more obstacles will come like more suddenly or more like surprises until you're going to miss the last ones. This is the principle of our arpeggio going to the top note. So my advice is what I would call reverse practicing, where you start with the chunk at the top, then you add the chunk that's before, and you run the chunk before and the last chunk, and then you go back to the third backward. I'm not talking backwards note for note. I'm talking backwards by
Mhm.
chunks. But practicing intelligently by chunks like that
Mm.
is another. There's a third one that I'd like to propose is never do anything without visualizing it in your head. So that means that if you're going to do a gesture or a bunch of notes that go from one point to another, before even playing them, one should not only hear them in one's head, but imagine the motion of doing it, imagine the fingers doing them, and finally, when you visualize it really well, then trying to do it with your hand. Um, if you take that principle really far, you could. It's Rostropovich who was used to say that before playing a note on his cello, he would never do it before knowing the whole piece by memory. but that's a bit big. But for sure, it's pointless to play something without hearing it before. And it's unfortunately it's so true of so many young players who just put the score in front of them and start from the first note and discover the piece by playing it. It's not the good way to discover it. And that leads me to a fourth recommendation: listening to a lot of music. Live is better, but recordings is fine, but not one or two, because then we start imitating, but always many. many versions. And you know, it's fantastic now with tools like, of course, YouTube is great, but sounds pretty crappy, but it's fantastic to see a lot of great players. Better than that, we have resources like almost every student is plugged somewhere in a university or a public library to Naxos Music Online, where you get about everything you want. And with these tools, you can open several windows in your computer and compare a lot of players, great players from Oistrakh to Ivry Gitlis playing the same thing, and compare how they use the bow, how it sounds. You can listen to other let's say other pieces by composers of the piece you play. If you play a Beethoven sonata, but please don't listen to the Beethoven sonata, listen to piano sonatas and string quartets and symphonies until you get enough of the spirit and the culture of Beethoven to understand your very sonata after that. So that means that listening to a lot of music, and I mean a lot of music, including basic food like Bach, well, that leads to developing one's imagination, and then it's easier to listen in your head and visualize what you're going to practice after.
Yeah, that's such a great answer. Earlier, you talked about how the secrets to violin playing was bow distribution. I'm guessing for winds that would be the airflow, but you just encapsulated the secrets to efficient practice.
Well, then it's up to everybody to manage it. Practicing is management.
Yes.
Is really management. So planning and knowing what you're talking about.
Yeah. Jean-François, what is a piece of advice that was given to you that you would like to pass on to our listeners?
Probably one of the best advice I was ever given was by my mother. My mother was an organist, and I must say that it was a bit serious, because when I was a kid, the earliest music that I can remember of playing in the house was the G minor Fantasia by Bach, which is pretty overpowering, you know.
It's a party house.
Yeah. But you know, the advice that she was giving me at the time was a very logical from an organist perspective, but not at all from a violinist perspective. She was always saying, listen to the bass, listen to the bass. And that, of course, did change my life, because it is the quintessence of how to listen, to start by listening to the bass. But it is not so evident for a treble part player like a violinist. So that's the advice that probably was most important in my life.
Oh, I agree with you. And I think that's a piece of advice you gave me. Jean-François, to finish, do you have a quick actionable tip that the listeners could implement today in their musical lives?
Just love every fraction of instant of every note of every music they're doing. That's it. And you know what? That's even the secret against performance anxiety. The cure to it resides in the present. When you play, if you're totally in love with the very moment of the very note that you're playing, well, then you can't really think in the past or in the future, and then you're much more comfortable. So I think that's the best advice I can give, is to really love it at every moment and be in the present tense.
That's amazing. Jean-François, I can't express with words what it means to me to have you on the show today. You are more than a teacher to me. You're a mentor and a father figure and a very dear friend. And I'm so grateful for everything you've done for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, René Paul. I mean, you gave it back 100 times.
Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this chat with Jean-François Rivest. I can't even pick a favorite takeaway from this show, because I feel like it goes way beyond the nitty-gritty stuff and really takes us back to the bigger conversation and to what is truly important. But I would love to know what your favorite takeaway from today's show is, so look up Mind Over Finger on Instagram and Facebook and let me know. Also, join the Mind Over Finger tribe at facebook.com/groups/Mind Over Finger tribe for inspiration, motivation, support, and more discussions on how to take your practice to the next level and enjoy the process. As always, you can find the show notes for this episode, resources on mindful and deliberate practice, and more information about Jean-François at mindoverfinger.com. Also, please do me a favor and head over to iTunes to rate and leave a review. I truly appreciate every single one of them, and they make all the hard work worth it. Next week, I'll be talking to Michael Klotz, violist with the Amernick Quartet and senior instructor at Florida International University in Miami. Michael and I were colleagues in the studio of Zvi Zeitlin at the Eastman School of Music and the Music Academy of the West, and we discuss our experience studying with Mr. Zeitlin and his lasting influence on our lives. A big thank you to my wonderful producer, Bella Kelly, and thank you for being here. À bientôt! Bonjour tout le monde, c'est avec un immense plaisir que je reçois quelqu'un de vraiment spécial pour moi aujourd'hui. J'ai l'honneur de parler avec Jean-François Rivest, chef d'orchestre et professeur, avec qui j'ai eu la chance d'étudier le violon pendant 11 ans. J'ai commencé avec Jean-François au Conservatoire de Chicoutimi à l'âge de 9 ans et j'ai continué jusqu'à ma graduation de l'Université de Montréal à l'âge de 20 ans. Jean-François est quelqu'un d'absolument extraordinaire, comme vous allez pouvoir le constater. Il est un très grand artiste et c'est la personne que je considère comme ayant eu la plus profonde influence sur mon évolution en tant que musicienne. Aujourd'hui, il nous parle d'écoute, d'imagination, de passion et de comment toujours grandir comme être humain et comme artiste. Je vous invite à lire son impressionnante biographie dans les notes qui viennent avec cet épisode. J'aimerais aussi beaucoup savoir ce que vous pensez de l'épisode, alors trouvez-moi sur Instagram ou Facebook. Il va y avoir les liens dans les notes de l'épisode. Et je vous invite à joindre le groupe de pratique intentionnelle en visitant facebook.com/groups/pratique intentionnelle. Et maintenant, ma discussion avec le merveilleux Jean-François Rivest. Jean-François Rivest, c'est un énorme plaisir de pouvoir discuter avec toi aujourd'hui.
Ah ben, c'est la même chose pour moi. C'est vraiment, écoute, ça fait tellement longtemps qu'on se connaît et puis c'est un grand, grand plaisir d'être sur ton podcast avec toi.
Comme je disais dans la portion anglaise de l'entrevue, tu es probablement la personne qui a le plus profondément marqué mon cheminement musical. Et non seulement parce que j'ai étudié avec toi pendant 11 ans, de l'âge de 9 ans jusqu'à 20 ans, mais on ne dira pas en quelle année, mais aussi parce que tu as vraiment influencé ma vision des choses en dehors de la musique, de juste jouer du violon. Je pense que pas mal tous tes élèves peuvent s'entendre pour dire que tu as vraiment toujours eu à cœur de nous encourager à écouter, à être perceptif de tout ce qui nous entoure, à être curieux, à explorer, à apprendre toujours plus, à pousser plus loin et apprécier toutes les choses de la vie, la nature, l'art, la bonne bouffe. Et ça, c'est vraiment un cadeau. Un grand cadeau parce que c'est une qualité qui affecte tout, comment on joue et comment on vit. Alors, avant de se lancer dans des questions plus axées sur la musique, j'aimerais que tu nous racontes ton histoire un peu parce que c'est un parcours vraiment fascinant et qui illustre bien ce que je viens de dire. Alors, peux-tu nous raconter un petit peu ton cheminement musical et qui est Jean-François Rivest?
Avec plaisir. C'est pas compliqué, j'ai commencé comme un jeune violoniste doué, donc à l'âge de 6-7 ans, je faisais du violon, du piano, j'ai étudié au Conservatoire, j'ai étudié avec une professeure extraordinaire qui s'appelle Madame Jelinkova à Montréal. J'ai étudié l'harmonie, le contrepoint, j'ai fait plein de choses assez jeune. J'ai développé mon oreille intérieure, dictée, solfège, comme tout le monde. Je me suis ramassé à Juilliard, à New York, à l'âge de 18 ans, 19 ans. J'ai fait mon bac en 1 an, ma maîtrise en 1 an, et puis je suis revenu de Juilliard, puis à 20 ans, j'ai passé l'audition pour les premiers violons de l'OSM, où j'ai obtenu un poste. Alors, j'ai été chanceux de gagner cette audition-là. J'ai passé 5 ans dans les très bonnes années à l'époque des grandes tournées internationales où l'orchestre était en train de prendre une expansion incroyable grâce au partenariat du toit Zarin Mehta, etc. C'était vraiment des années très, très riches de l'OSM. Alors, j'ai été violoniste à l'orchestre à ce moment-là. J'ai enseigné à McGill. J'ai fait vraiment toutes sortes d'ensembles, et puis un peu de solo, un peu de musique de chambre, etc. Et puis moi, puisque je suis un gars assez attiré par la nature, ceux qui me connaissent vont sourire, mais c'est très important dans ma vie. Un de mes rêves, c'était d'aller habiter vraiment dans la nature profonde, et puis c'était impossible dans la vie de musicien de ville que j'étais, New York, Montréal, tout ça. Alors j'ai accepté une offre qu'on m'a faite d'aller enseigner au Conservatoire de Chicoutimi, et j'ai lâché tout ce que je faisais à Montréal à 25 ans, puis je suis allé au Conservatoire de Chicoutimi, et dans le but de me trouver une maison dans la forêt ou quelque chose. En tout cas, c'était un peu un rêve d'enfance. Et là, au Conservatoire de Chicoutimi, j'ai découvert des jeunes avec beaucoup, beaucoup de talent, dont une certaine René-Paul Gauthier et puis plusieurs autres. Et j'ai rencontré ma femme, Edith. On a eu nos 2 premiers enfants à Chicoutimi. J'ai eu une superbe classe de violon et j'ai parti un orchestre de chambre avec mes étudiants puis avec d'autres. C'était vraiment formidable. Et j'ai trouvé ce que je cherchais, c'est-à-dire une petite maison dans le fjord du Saguenay avec les belugas et les aurores boréales. Donc, c'était une partie de ma vie extrêmement importante. Et évidemment, je ne pouvais pas rester là éternellement. On m'a rapatrié dans le sens qu'on m'a offert une job à l'Université de Montréal, où je suis depuis maintenant 27 ans, prof de violon pendant une première partie. Et là, j'ai commencé à diriger plus sérieusement. J'ai eu toutes sortes de moments dans ma carrière, mais on peut dire que la direction est devenue plus sérieuse à un moment donné. J'ai eu le poste de directeur artistique de l'Orchestre symphonique de Laval pendant 10 ans, de l'Orchestre 13 Strings à Ottawa pendant 5 ans. J'ai dirigé beaucoup, ici comme à l'étranger, comme aux États-Unis, comme en Europe, comme en Amérique du Sud, mais surtout ici, pour ceux qui connaissent plus l'environnement d'ici, j'ai beaucoup dirigé l'OSM, l'OM, les ballets, l'Opéra de Montréal, les Violons du Roi, en tout cas. J'ai eu la chance de diriger beaucoup ici, alors ça, c'est le fun. Et puis, quelque chose que j'ai pas mentionné dans ton entrevue en anglais tantôt, mais j'ai quand même été pendant 6-7 ans directeur artistique du Centre d'art Orford, proche de Montréal, qui est quand même quelque chose qui m'a demandé beaucoup d'énergie puis qui a été très valorisant. J'ai pu le faire développer beaucoup. Ça a été vraiment le fun. Et puis, voilà, aujourd'hui, je peux dire que c'est la direction que j'enseigne le plus. J'ai toujours un étudiant ou deux de temps en temps en violon, mais j'enseigne la direction d'orchestre à l'Université de Montréal. Et je dirige toujours à plein temps. Donc, je suis en plein dans Così fan tutte en ce moment.
Tu fais vraiment tout. Tu es violoniste, chef d'orchestre, directeur musical, professeur, avant tout un grand artiste et un grand enthousiaste de la vie.
Mm-hmm.
Et une chose que tu n'as pas dit, que moi je peux mentionner, c'est vraiment, tu dis que tu as passé 7 ans au Saguenay, mais tu as vraiment laissé ta marque, tu as eu un impact très important pendant que tu étais là.
Mm-hmm.
Tu étais une grande force artistique dans la région pendant que tu étais là. Puis je pense que tu fais la même chose un peu partout où tu vas. Tu fais une différence et ton énergie est contagieuse et je pense que tout le monde bénéficie de cet enthousiasme-là, de cette passion-là que tu as. C'est vraiment extraordinaire.
Merci.
Jean-François, on a discuté pas mal en anglais et j'espère vraiment que nos amis francophones ici ont écouté la portion anglaise parce que c'était rempli de gemmes précieux et de très grande sagesse. Alors, si on peut faire juste un petit retour là-dessus, on a parlé de comment développer une aptitude à écouter mieux, à développer notre oreille et notre sensibilité artistique et élargir notre habileté de percevoir en général. Peux-tu résumer ça un peu en gros?
Oui, en quelques mots, c'est mon point de vue, évidemment. Je ne peux que partager que mon point de vue. Mais non, mais ce que je veux dire, c'est qu'on pourrait voir les choses autrement. Mais je vais partager mon point de vue à moi. Je pense que la question musicale, premièrement, je crois fortement que la musique est une des plus belles manifestations de l'esprit humain et est une manifestation de l'imagination humaine. C'est d'abord quelque chose qui se passe dans l'imaginaire musical de chaque personne. Tout le monde a un imaginaire musical, sauf exception. Et je pense que quand on fait de la musique, on crée la musique dans notre imaginaire musical, on le transfère à notre instrument qui fait voyager la musique jusqu'à l'auditeur, ou le public. Et là, ça retourne dans l'imaginaire musical de notre public ou de notre auditeur. Et dans le fond, la communication est d'imaginaire musical à imaginaire musical. Le son réel de l'instrument n'est qu'un passage, un outil. Donc, ceci étant dit, ça veut dire que le grand travail qu'on a à faire d'abord, il est sur notre imaginaire musical, pas sur notre violon. D'abord, c'est bien sûr que notre violon ou notre instrument doit posséder la technique adéquate pour réussir à passer le message. Mais ça, c'est de la technique. Mais vraiment, le fond de la musique, c'est l'imaginaire musical qu'on doit développer. Pour pouvoir le développer, c'est comme il faut apprendre à voir. Et pour apprendre à voir, il faut apprendre à développer nos sensors, comme on dit en français, c'est-à-dire nos radars, nos yeux musicaux, nos oreilles internes musicales. Et pour ça, on ne peut pas voir ce qu'on ne voit pas. On ne peut pas entendre ce qu'on n'entend pas. Et pour ça, on a besoin de l'aide de d'autres qui vont nous pointer, nous montrer les choses. Ça commence par le solfège, la dictée musicale, une tonne d'harmonie, de contrepoint, analyse judicieuse qui fait qu'on comprend comment la musique est construite, pas juste constatée, d'histoire, puis histoire, pas de l'étude têteuse de par cœur, mais de l'histoire qui fait qu'on ressent ce que les compositeurs ressentaient au moment où, ou en tout cas on essaye de ressentir, on essaie de comprendre leur cheminement, on essaie de comprendre les grands courants de l'histoire. Et c'est quelque chose quand tu penses que je suis en train de faire cosy, puis c'est l'année avant la Révolution française. Puis ça parle des castes sociales, là, un instant, là, c'est pas rien, là. Mais ça parle pas juste de ça, mais ça... Alors, je pense que, ce que je veux dire, c'est que c'est toutes ces disciplines parallèles à l'instrument que beaucoup d'étudiants font comme s'ils sont obligés, parce que c'est plate de faire du ear training, puis c'est faux. Tout ça contribue à notre culture musicale. Tout ça en plus de la connaissance du répertoire. Puis ça, la connaissance du répertoire, c'est pas combien Brahms a écrit de symphonies. Ah oui, 4. Non, c'est pas ça. C'est une connaissance intime qui nous fait pleurer tellement que c'est beau. Et c'est cette connaissance-là, c'est cette prise en charge de la musique en dedans de notre âme à nous qui fait qu'après ça, on a de quoi à dire dans notre message, mais on a aussi une immense culture musicale sur laquelle s'appuyer pour essayer d'imaginer notre musique. Alors, je pense que la job qu'on a à faire en tant que musicien en développement, c'est développer notre culture musicale et notre grande écoute intérieure. Après ça, bien sûr, on développe notre technique pour être capable de jouer comme on l'entend. Et puis là, ben, la clé, c'est d'être capable d'accorder notre technique à ce que notre imagination entend. À chaque note, à chaque seconde, à chaque distribution d'archet, à chaque souffle. Et puis ça, ben, ça devient un exercice de visualisation. Où est-ce qu'il n'y a pas une note qu'on joue sans l'avoir profondément bien entendue. Après ça, on va être capable de la jouer comme on l'entend.
C'est extraordinaire. Et pour quelqu'un qui voudrait faire un cheminement dans ce sens-là, comment on peut s'y prendre? C'est où un bon endroit pour commencer?
Je pense que tout cheminement est par nature un cheminement personnel. Ça, mettons qu'on parle d'un étudiant qui soit jeune, qui soit avancé, qu'on soit jeune professionnel en développement, qu'on soit un artiste en plein développement, on est toujours en évolution. Et le projet de se développer est heureusement ou malheureusement, dépendant du point de vue, totalement notre responsabilité. C'est pas le prof qui nous fait nous développer, c'est nous, notre propre professeur. Le prof est un guide qui va nous montrer des trucs, qui va nous amener sur des terrains, qui va nous ouvrir des portes, qui va nous ouvrir les yeux. Mais dans le fond, la job, on la fait soi-même. Alors, où commencer? Ben, il n'y a pas de secret. Il y a plein de façons. Je veux dire, il n'y a pas une seule façon. Mais il faut commencer une chose à la fois. Et puis, je pense que si on dit qu'il faut développer son imagination musicale, puis qu'il faut écouter de la musique, tout ça, il faut commencer par quelque chose, n'importe quoi. Souvent, ça peut être lié à ce qu'on est en train d'étudier. Si on joue une sonate de Beethoven, il faut certainement aller écouter les quatuors, puis aller écouter les sonates de piano, puis connaître les symphonies de Beethoven. Ah, puis tiens, peut-être ses prédécesseurs. Pourquoi Beethoven écrit ça de même? Parce que Haydn a fait ça de même. Mais est-ce qu'on connaît bien Carl Philipp Emmanuel, qui, lui, a inventé le style classique? Ah, tiens, bon, allez écouter d'autres choses. Je pense que souvent, une bonne façon de procéder, c'est d'aller de fil en aiguille, comme ça. Une chose amène une autre chose, amène une autre chose, au lieu de dire, OK, aujourd'hui, je prends l'histoire de la musique, puis je passe du début jusqu'à la fin, de A à Z. On le fera jamais. Si on dit, non, tiens, je vais écouter toutes les sonates de Mozart. Ben non, on le fera jamais non plus. Alors, je pense qu'il faut y aller un peu avec de l'intuition. On peut y aller au hasard, on peut y aller un petit peu méthodiquement. Mais je pense qu'à travers le cheminement, il faut qu'il y ait toujours une bonne santé. La bonne santé, ça veut dire que ça inclut du travail sur l'oreille, puis ça inclut du travail sur la technique. Ça, on ne peut pas lâcher, ça en prend tout le temps. Mais à travers ça, ben là, on développe notre écoute, on développe notre sensibilité, puis toutes nos expériences comptent là-dedans. Même un voyage en Europe ou une après-midi au musée ou un Saint-Exupéry qu'on va lire en passant, toutes ces expériences-là contribuent à nous enrichir et à nous faire devenir un meilleur musicien. Donc, c'est une expérience à la fois.
C'est vrai. Très, très vrai. Jean-François, une question que j'aime demander à mes invités, c'est leur vision d'une session de pratique idéale. Il y a
Hum.
plusieurs façons d'approcher ça et c'est une grosse question.
Oui.
Alors, qu'est-ce que c'est selon toi?
Wow! Ben évidemment, ça peut dépendre des circonstances. Mettons qu'on est dans le feu de l'action, qu'on a un concert à jouer dans les prochains jours, on ne fera pas le même genre de pratique que si on est dans un développement où est-ce qu'on a 2 mois avant une fin maîtrise ou je sais pas quoi, là, tu sais. Alors, il n'y a pas de pratique idéale at large. Ça dépend vraiment des circonstances. Mais il y a quand même des critères qui sont récurrents. Le premier, c'est la bonne santé. Puis pour ça, ça veut dire s'échauffer, s'étirer, se préparer. La plus grande ennemi du bon travail, c'est le stress. De tellement vouloir qu'on plonge comme des fous dans un travail effréné, stressé. Alors, donc, travailler calmement, travailler lentement, respirer, être en bonne santé dans notre travail, arrêter souvent pour s'étirer, pas se faire mal. Tu sais, bon, ça, c'est une bonne chose. Je crois beaucoup aussi à peu importe ce qu'on pratique et comment on le fait, il y a un critère, c'est d'être toujours connecté à ce qu'on fait. Donc, écouter profondément, tout le temps, chaque seconde, et pas pratiquer machinalement. Maintenant, quand même, pour répondre à ta question, je pense qu'une pratique, d'après moi, c'est vraiment un projet qu'il faut manager, comme si on était le gérant d'une compagnie de pratique, là. Et ça veut dire regarder c'est quoi le but. Ah, je dois apprendre cette pièce-là pendant 2 mois, cette autre-là pendant 4, celle-ci pendant 2 semaines, et je joue ça en concert demain. Mais ça, c'est 4 projets différents qui doivent se chevaucher. Alors, je propose que la planification de la pratique soit toujours un genre de gérance organique où est-ce qu'on sait combien de temps on a jusqu'à temps qu'on va falloir qu'on soit prêt avec cette œuvre-là ou avec cette étude-là ou avec ce projet-là. Donc de la gérance, une bonne gérance. Après ça, ben, on divise le temps qu'on a. On n'a pas toujours les 4-5 heures qu'on voudrait avoir par jour, mais le temps qu'on a, on le divise entre du temps pour s'échauffer, du temps pour faire une certaine proportion de technique, parce que si on n'a pas une bonne technique, on ne vaut rien. Et puis, le reste du temps, ben, on divise ce qu'on peut dans les différents projets. Je pense qu'une dernière chose que j'aurais le goût de dire, c'est qu'on ne regarde pas assez les avantages et la bonne santé de faire de la pratique virtuelle dans sa tête.
Mhm.
Qu'on soit dans le métro, qu'on soit dans l'autobus, qu'on soit en train de marcher, ça c'est encore mieux. Visualiser, voir les déplacements, les changements de position, les difficultés, voir passer les différents traits, les notes, entendre les sons qu'on veut faire, les tempos qu'on voudrait avoir. Je pense que ça donne énormément d'avantages et c'est pas fatigant. Puis ça fait passer un temps qui autrement, les autres personnes autour de nous dans le train, ils regardent des stupides soap operas sur leur téléphone, sans parler de Facebook.
Jean-François, une chose que tu as dit tantôt dans l'entrevue en anglais que j'aimais vraiment beaucoup, c'est que tu as mentionné que chaque geste compte. Et ça, je suis d'accord avec toi, non seulement en termes de ce que ça fait dans la pratique, si on va dans le concret, dans le micro, dans la technicalité
Mhm.
de que pour une violoniste, chaque coup d'archet compte. On peut construire des bonnes habitudes ou on peut aussi le faire d'une façon un peu passive et ne pas construire. Ou peut-être pour un instrumentiste avant, c'est dans le contrôle de l'air. Mais Alors, on peut le voir de ce point de vue-là, mais aussi sur le point de vue de la vie en général, que chaque geste compte. Et si avant qu'on se quitte, tu pouvais juste nous reparler de ça un petit peu, juste au cas où certaines personnes n'ont pas eu la chance d'entendre l'entrevue en anglais. Et ça, je trouvais que c'était un point extrêmement important, vraiment, à quel point chaque geste compte.
Mhm. OK. Ben, en fait, je vais partir d'un point de vue qui est bien simple. Je pense que le mot hobby, ou en français, pire, désennui, est un peu l'ennemi du développement personnel. Dans ce sens que ce qui est important, c'est que tout ce qu'on fait, on le fait parce qu'on en est passionné. On le fait parce que ça nous enrichit. On le fait parce qu'on aime ça. Alors que, oui, il y a des choses qu'on fait dans notre métier, puis il y a des choses qu'on fait en dehors de notre métier qui nous apportent d'autres richesses, d'autres, même qui nous changent l'esprit. C'est important de se changer les idées, là. Je suis pas contre ça. Mais on le fait pas comme pour passer le temps. On le fait pas comme pour un hobby. Ben, à moins que le hobby, c'est ça que ça veut dire, peut-être, là. Mais on le fait parce que ça nous enrichit autrement. Alors, je pense que tout ce qu'on fait, que ce soit pour prendre du temps avec notre famille, puis ça, la nourriture, on parle souvent beaucoup de cuisine dans notre société actuelle, c'est parce qu'on est un petit peu en recherche de comment arrêter la roue qui tourne tellement trop vite dans nos vies de fous. Puis c'est multiplié par 1000 avec l'étalement urbain, avec la demande constante d'efficacité dans tout ce qui nous entoure, et surtout avec beaucoup de manque de profondeur dans une vie qui est très en surface. Je pense à toute la vie virtuelle, réseaux sociaux, que beaucoup de gens vivent, apparence, Instagram, Finalement, on se retrouve avec du monde qui ne mettent pas les deux mains dedans ben souvent. Ils sont tout le temps sur une espèce d'autres planètes qui n'existent pas vraiment, alors qu'il faut se mettre les deux mains dedans puis faire des choses. Alors, oui, se mettre les deux mains dans la nourriture, se mettre les deux mains dans le jardinage, puis se mettre les deux mains dans n'importe quelle activité qu'on aime faire parce que ça nous passionne, que ce soit la randonnée en montagne, que ce soit la plongée sous-marine, n'importe quoi. C'est quelque chose qui nous permet de plonger dans la vie avec passion et avec notre corps et notre esprit entier, et qui, oui, nous change les idées de notre travail, qui souvent est assez assidu et harassant. Mais cette philosophie-là, elle vaut à peu près à tous les niveaux. Donc, c'est la même chose dans chaque note quand on joue, mais c'est la même chose dans chaque geste qu'on pose, puis c'est la même chose dans chaque activité qu'on fait. On le fait à plein tout le temps. Vivre à 100 000 à l'heure, c'est pas vivre en courant. Vivre à 100 000 à l'heure, c'est vivre en appréciant chaque moment au présent tout le temps. C'est peut-être utopique un peu, puis ça marche pas tout le temps, mais disons que c'est un mode de vie.
Jean-François, comme je l'ai dit plus tôt, tu es probablement la personne qui a marqué mon parcours comme musicienne le plus, et tu es aussi une source d'inspiration en général pour moi et pour d'autres maintenant, j'en suis certaine, pour comment être vraiment présent dans la vie et essayer de vivre pleinement. Alors, je suis vraiment reconnaissante pour tous ces beaux cadeaux que tu m'as faits à travers les années et encore maintenant. Et merci infiniment d'avoir pris le temps de parler avec moi aujourd'hui.
Ah ben écoute, c'était un grand, grand plaisir parce que tu sais, donner dans la vie, ça se fait pas sans qu'il y ait quelqu'un qui non seulement le reçoit, mais aussi qui en donne autant en échange. C'était ton cas, puis c'était le cas de d'autres étudiants que j'ai eu aussi, mais vraiment, c'est l'échange qui compte. Puis dans le fond, on est en train de dire peut-être la chose la plus importante, c'est les relations humaines, hein. Alors c'est moi qui te remercie, Paul.